Hello and welcome to time series forecasting. This is an introduction to chapter number 5, which is about time series regression models. And in this chapter, I'm going to talk about the general concepts of time series regression models. And these models are very useful when forecasting because of their simplicity, interpretability, and accuracy. That is why I'm going to spend a little bit time on these models. And essentially the whole point here is to explain you the intuition behind using these models, and what you should be focusing here is your ability to interpret the models. I will provide you the codes. All you have to do is replicate those codes using your own data set and then interpret the results, and based on the results you will also test the accuracy of the model and compare these models with the benchmark methods that I described earlier. So essentially this is what you are going to do. You are going to apply any new model and then compare the results of that model with the benchmark methods. Compare the accuracy of the new model with that of the benchmark methods. So essentially the basic concept of a regression model is that we want to forecast a variable yt in terms of other variable x, and we believe that another variable xt, it may be having some impact on yt. That is, these two variables are moving together. So if we can find other variables xt, those are co-moving with yt, we may be able to forecast this variable yt. In fact, we want to find many xt variables, those may be co-moving with yt, so that we can use the information contained in these xt variables to predict yt, and that is the point. So we are going to assume that this variable yt, it has a linear relationship with xt variable or xt variables, and we want to predict this yt variable based on xt. So this is like different than what we were doing so far. We were only using information contained in yt to predict the future values of yt. Now we are trying to predict this yt variable based on some other xt variables. So here is what we are going to do in this chapter. First, we are going to start with a simple linear regression model, and we are going to assume that our variable of interest yt, it is a function of a single variable xt. That is, only one variable xt can be used to forecast yt. But essentially yt variable may be co-moving or being affected by many xt variables. Hence we need to extend the concept and include more than one variable on the right hand side, and we'll talk about multiple linear regression models, in which case we'll include more than one variables on the right hand side to forecast a variable yt. And we are going to do all of this using the principle of least squares, and then we'll talk about the goodness of a fit of these regression models. It will be useful if we can somehow measure how good our fit is, that is, how well this xt variable is affecting yt. So we'll use the concept of r squared to know how well xt is explaining yt. And then we'll talk about how to evaluate the regression model. So just like in the benchmark methods, we were using various methods and measurements to evaluate forecast accuracy. We're gonna do the same thing. We are going to calculate the residuals, and then we are going to evaluate some properties of these residuals to know whether we are utilizing all the information in these xt variables to forecast yt variable. And then I'll talk about another useful type of variables. Those are called dummy variables or binary variables, and they take on value of 0 and 1 to show presence or absence of any particular attribute in a variable. So we'll talk about how we can use these dummy variables in our regression model, and I will particularly talk about how to include these dummy variables to capture seasonal patterns and how to capture other phenomena using these dummy variables. Now we may have 100 or 200 xt variables. Those may be potentially affecting our variable of interest yt. Now obviously we cannot use all these xt variables on the right hand side because of the degrees of freedom problem. We have to choose the best xt variables. Those are useful in predicting yt. So we have to select predictors, that is which variables should we include in our model. So I will talk about different methods that we can use to select predictors. So we'll talk about subset selection, and in this I'll talk about stepwise regression, forward stepwise selection, and backward selection methods that you can use to select different predictors. And then we'll talk more about forecasting with these regression models, and we'll talk about how can we use these regression models to forecast. I'll probably talk a little bit about nonlinear regression modeling, that is how can we include nonlinearity in the regression model. And finally I'll talk about two problems, those may undermine the predictability of our regression model. I'll talk about multicollinearity and heteroscedasticity and how to deal with these so that you can get accurate predictions of this yt variable. So this is pretty much the agenda for this chapter. Alright, see you in the next video. Bye bye.